Wanna talk? So let's talk. Yeah. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna talk.
Good evening, and welcome. It is time for Talk to Solomon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Stan Solomon. I'm the host.
Joining Stan is me, Steve Davis, Chief Steve Davis, the co-host.
And also joining us as a co-host is our friend Brent Johnson from freedomradio.us. Brent, how are you this evening?
Doing great, and Happy New Year to you all. It's been so long. It's a pleasure to be back with you and the listeners.
Well, we
viewers.
are anxious to have a good conversation. Also joining us once again is attorney Michael Connelly from the U.S. Justice Foundation. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Good to be with you.
It's always a pleasure having someone who knows specifically that this president of ours, President Barack Obama, has not read, doesn't understand, doesn't care for, doesn't obey, doesn't follow, and doesn't give a rat's patoot about the United States Constitution. Am I close?
You're exactly right. He violates his oath of office on a daily basis. He takes the same oath that I took as an Army officer to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. He's not doing that. He's not only not defending it, he's actively trying to destroy it. And he is committing impeachable offenses, as far as I'm concerned, every day he does that.
Well, I don't think there's anyone on this panel that would disagree with you. The question becomes, we are seeing, before even his second inauguration, a full court press to destroy the concept that rights come from God and that the Constitution guarantees them. It doesn't award them. It doesn't give them. It just ensures that government will not impact upon them. Can you discuss that a bit?
Well, absolutely, because in a book that I've written called Our Constitution, where I take each article, each section, each amendment of the Constitution and put them in as originally printed, I talk about each area and I explain it. And one of the things that people don't really know exists for the most part is the preamble to the Bill of Rights. It's different from the preamble of the Constitution. And the preamble of the Bill of Rights basically says that the rights enumerated in the Bill of Rights are not given to us by the government. They are our God-given rights endowed by our Creator with those rights. The government has no right to take them away. Since they didn't give them to us, they can't take the rights away. Unfortunately, Obama thinks that otherwise. He thinks that he is declaring himself a dictator. He thinks he can take away the rights of individuals under the Constitution. He's about to try to do it with the Second Amendment, and we're about to fight him every step of the way through the U.S. Justice Foundation.
All right, now, excuse me just a minute, because you mentioned the preamble to the Bill of Rights. Most Americans don't have any idea such a thing exists. Can you tell us, one, when it was taken out, or when they stopped displaying it, and two, what the reason for a separate preamble to the Bill of Rights was by the founders?
Well, the founders adopted the Constitution, and were trying to get it ratified by the colonies. The problem was that many people, like Jefferson and Madison, thought that there was not adequate protection in the Constitution of individual rights. Many states were saying they would not ratify the Constitution and form a union unless there was a Bill of Rights protecting things like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to keep and bear arms, the right to be secure in our homes from unreasonable searches and seizures. So they put in the Bill of Rights, and as they put in a preamble. Now, if you go to the National Archives website, you can read the entire preamble, you can read the entire Bill of Rights. But if you go to the average textbook in the United States that puts in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, they've removed that preamble. And the reason for removing it is because it specifically sets forth the idea that these rights are not rights given to us by the government, but rights that we have inherently as human beings, and the government is just prohibited from taking them away from us, and that's what the Bill of Rights is all about.
Brent, your thoughts?
Well, first off, I want to acknowledge you, Stan, for saying it so perfectly. That is that there is no such thing as a constitutional right, constitutional guarantees, constitutional protections, but you don't get your rights from the Constitution. The actual preamble says, in part, in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers, that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added. And this is restrictive on government. This is clearly limitation on government. So the preamble to the Bill of Rights is very, very specific, that so there's no way to misconstrue the Constitution itself. This is a restriction on the government. And what you have today is you have an illegitimate dictator president, and I call him illegitimate because I still maintain that he's not qualified constitutionally to be president, which means he isn't, no matter who votes for him. And the illegitimate president does not see any limitations on his power. He can do anything. That's what a dictator is. Dictator is, I dictate and you obey. He can do anything in his own mind. And until the people, the legislature, the courts stand up against him and tell him, no, you cannot, no, you will not, he will continue doing that. That's just human nature. You know, children will push the envelope as far as they can push. The parent says, no more. And we are the parents in this case, and we've been doing a very good job of it.
Chief?
First off, like our guest, I many times in my life have taken an oath to defend the Constitution against enemies foreign and domestic. I often wondered what a domestic enemy was, and I'm now convinced that Barack Obama and people like him are domestic enemies to the United States because they are trying to destroy our Constitution, which is our basic, our most fundamental law of our land. Also, it appears to me that, as David Horowitz pointed out in his book, How to Beat the Democrats, that the left takes these events like a war. They treat them like a war. Republicans treat them like a debate. But the left's tactics have been very good. They've been much better than those on the right. So, for example, in World War II, we were the good guys. We had the right idea. But if our military leaders hadn't been effective in those battles, it wouldn't have mattered. And right now, I believe the left, they're much more effective in their battles. We've got to start fighting them at their own terms, be better than them to win this war we're in right now.
Michael, your organization, the United States Justice Foundation, fights for various and sundry causes, I'll call them, having to do with rights and right. They're two different things to some people. I believe that the idea of a right, and Alan Keyes, of course, has articulated it well, is that it is the right thing to do. You can't have a right to do something that's wrong. That's not the concept. The concept of rights was God, if you will, gave us direction, and you have a right to do the right thing, but you don't have a right to do something that is wrong, if you will. Your thoughts?
Well, that's correct. The idea of rights is that we are protected in things like the right to freedom of speech and the right to freedom of religion. That doesn't mean that we can abuse those rights. That doesn't mean, for example, that the classic example is that if you're in a crowded theater and you yell fire and cause a panic and people get hurt, that's not a right of free speech. But the idea is that we have rights that are given to us by our Creator. The government cannot take those rights away. And the idea that something is right or wrong is based on that concept. The concept that we have individual rights and that as long as we do not abuse those rights, they cannot be taken away from us. And the government doesn't have any power to do that. The Constitution specifically says that. If you go to the body of the Constitution, you'll see that the whole idea of a federal government in the Constitution was that it be a very limited government. Certain powers were given to the legislature, certain powers were given to the president and to the judiciary. Specifically in Article 2 of the Constitution, the president is given the power, actually he's told he has to do this, to enforce the laws passed by Congress. He has no power to adopt laws on his own or to refuse to enforce them. Right now at the U.S. Justice Foundation, we're involved in the cases in the Supreme Court on the Defense of Marriage Act and things like that, where the president is, I'm not going to enforce these laws. I'm just not going to do it. Now we're looking at a situation where tomorrow he is going to announce various legislative initiatives to control firearms in this country, but he's also going to do some of it by executive order. He has no power under the Constitution to do that, specifically to take away the rights of granted under the Constitution. Those rights were given to us. The right to keep and bear arms is not about gun control. It was specifically designed so that we could defend ourselves against a tyrannical government, and that's what we have. That's what the concept of rights is all about in the Constitution.
Now, Michael, we have a situation where the media and the educational establishment in this country will not inform people. You mentioned the preamble to the Bill of Rights. Under whose authority was it, quote unquote, taken out, and under whose direction is it that no one, not no one, but the vast majority, I'll say 95% of the people in this country, if not 99, have no idea that there's a preamble, and in this preamble, if I remember correctly, the term is inviolate. It cannot. There is no process. There's a process for changing the Constitution. There is no process for changing the Bill of Rights. Am I correct?
Well, that's basically correct. I mean, the Constitution can be amended, but the Constitution, the requirements for amending the Constitution are very strict. You have to get 2/3 of the members of both houses of Congress to vote for an amendment. Then you have to get 3/4 of the state legislatures to do it. It's not going to happen, particularly when you're dealing with taking away individual rights. But as far as how this happened, how people are being denied the right to know what's in there, this is exactly what the U.S. Justice Foundation, one of the things we're involved in. In addition to litigation, we're involved in education. We're trying to get these booklets out to schools. We had recently 500 copies ordered by a civic club in South Texas to distribute in 6 school districts, because it's a situation where over time they have just changed the textbooks, they have changed the way children are taught in the schools. The colleges basically ban the Constitution. Any discussion of the Constitution there is about how to destroy it, not how to utilize it or how to protect it. And this has just been a gradual process. What was pointed out earlier is that, yes, the liberals are much better at this. They've been doing this for years. They've been taking control of the school boards. They've been taking control of our schools, and we haven't seen it. Many conservatives have sat back and thought, oh, well, this is meaningless. Nothing like this is ever going to happen. Now we're seeing the fruits of what has happened in our colleges and our secondary school.
Brent, let me ask you, we all know about these executive orders. We'll be talking about them more as they come out. We know that there's this lip service. We know that there's going to be this, for the kids, if only we can save one kid. Meanwhile, they're killing, 1.5 million kids, or maybe it's a larger number, call it 1.5 million kids every year through abortion murder. Your thoughts on what it will take to actually get that, what do you ever want to call it, that paradigm shift in public perception?
Well, it's going to take an all-out assault by us on the executive branch of government. We have to go after the president, and we have to do what's necessary.
I agree, Michael. Let me get Brent's input here. Go ahead, Brent.
Well, first off, I want to say that what Michael just said is correct, that there are certain things the government cannot do. But what people need to realize, and here's where you get public perception, is that if government cannot do something, when it tries to do that something that is not authorized to do, its actions are invalid. Any law, any executive order, any claim to a power that was not delegated to the government is an invalid claim. So recently, a Marine veteran named Joshua Boston came out and he basically said to Dianne Feinstein, pass whatever assault weapon bans you want, I will not register my guns, because any law you pass of that sort is non-law. It's unconstitutional and therefore invalid. And that's the perception that the public needs to have in order to take proper corrective action. See, I don't recognize Obama's right to tell me that I can't have firearms capable of shooting more than one bullet. I don't recognize that right. I'm not looking and saying, tell me what I can and cannot do to defend my family, my life, my property, my country. I do not ask the government for that. And I do not recognize the government's power to tell me what I can and cannot do in that regard. That's what we need the people of America to understand. Now, how we go about it, that's a tough one, because the media is bought and sold, and politics has infused into every facet of American society. And so, getting it out to the American people in terms of the public, the general masses, is a very tall order. And I've been working on that for over 20 years with, a certain degree of success. But I still believe, as I did back then, that the only real way to do it is individually get individuals to open their eyes and open their ears, and then they get other individuals to open their eyes and open their ears, and little by little you get more and more people who are willing to stand up and say, no, you're not going to tell me what, how I live my life. No, I don't obey you. I don't comply with you. I don't accept that you're telling me that, because you have no authority to tell me that. Whatever that, in this case, gun control, or whatever it is. That's the only way. You're not going to do it en masse.
I agree. Let me get the chief in this conversation, because the state of Texas has, I don't know if they've passed or are just presenting, but they basically said any rule infringing on the right to have and bear arms is invalid in the state of Texas, and any federal officer trying to enforce such a ban will be imprisoned and fined $50,000. Chief?
Well, first of all, I can't imagine anybody individually standing up against the federal government, because as soon as you do, you're going to be in a federal prison somewhere, and it's hard to really fight your battle when you're behind bars and you're trying to muster up all of your measly little funds to fight the federal government. So without some type of unification, I really don't see that happening. I don't want to be the first guy that goes against the federal government and ends up in prison fighting my battle. There's got to be a better way. I don't believe in being a martyr, so you can't help anybody if you're gone or dead. But what's happened in Texas, there's obviously some type of leadership there that's taken the bull by the horns and actually trying to protect the people and their rights, rather than just trying to protect their jobs or get their own way with this liberal utopia. So what we need is to find and encourage leaders. That's the first thing that we can do. If you're that person, go out there. You got to become a leader, because you're going to have troops, some type of organization and strength to get this done. But I really can't see anybody individually fighting the federal government and winning anything. You might even end up one of those terrorist camps we never heard from again.
Well, we know that you can't confront them, you can't win, but you can perhaps participate and support and do other things. Michael, talk to us about what they've done in Texas and Wyoming, I understand.
Well, it's not just those two states. There are other states, too. And basically, at this point, and I've been preaching this now for a year or more, the best line of defense we have is the state legislatures. They have a right to refuse to allow certain federal government regulations and rules and laws to be enforced if they violate the individual rights of the states or individual rights of people and the states under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which is part of the Bill of Rights. What the states are doing is essential at this point. They need to stand up and say, you can adopt all the gun control legislation you want. It violates the Constitution. We are not going to allow it to be enforced here. You have 27 states that are refusing to, for example, in Obamacare, do the individual insurance exchange. They're saying we're nullifying that law. We're not going to obey that law. It infringes on the individual rights of the people in this state and takes away their tax money. So that is one of our best lines of defense at this point. People need to support their state legislatures. They also need to support local governments, school boards. Take back the school boards. Take back the city councils. Have people all over their state saying, no, we're not going to give away our individual rights. They belong to us. They are inherent. We're not going to just roll over and let them take them away from them. Now, if individuals want to stand up and fight, it's going to be risky. But that's what the U.S. Justice Foundation does. We provide free legal assistance to people who have their constitutional rights being violated. We also work with state governments. We also work with legislatures, local governments. We're going to be on the front line in the courts, but other people have to be on the front lines in their state government.
Chief?
Well, one office we haven't mentioned that is critically important is the Office of County Sheriff. The only law enforcement official in the United States that's elected by the people and answers to his community is the county sheriff. And so they can be very effective in controlling any other agency, the federal government in particular, from coming into a county and violating the citizens' rights. What's happening now is the federal government, the left is very aware of this, and they're trying to abolish the Office of County Sheriff. They're doing it in many ways. Some places legislatively, just taking away the authority of the sheriff. Other places, like here in Indianapolis, they've merged the sheriff's department with the city department. Now there is no county sheriff, basically. He just runs the jail. And so you have a city police chief in charge who's not elected. The mayor has been elected. The state police don't have a community to fall back on. State police, the superintendent is not elected by the people. They're appointed by the governor. But the county sheriff is elected by the people and has the power to protect the citizens that vote them in office. And that is really one office we should very, very strongly support.
Well, the town constables also have similar powers. Go ahead. Was that you, Brent, or Michael?
Yeah, no, that's me. And the other thing is, Steve, that as is happening in Delaware with Sheriff Jeff Christopher, the Constitution of each state guarantees the office of the sheriff. So it cannot be. It's another one. It cannot eliminate the voice and the power of the sheriff.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It's been done. It's been done right here in Indianapolis. The county sheriff, all they got to do is the council cuts the budget, the council takes away their cars, and the sheriff has no ability. The sheriff in this county has no deputies.
All right, just a minute. Let's do it one at a time. Go ahead, Brent.
There is no legal authority to do so. When it was done in Pennsylvania also, it's illegal. It is unlawful. It is a non-delegated power because the sheriff has always been the protector of the people and the ultimate law enforcement power, the ultimate peace officer in each state. And that goes back hundreds of years, even predating America. And by the way, as an individual, I have bucked the federal government for 20 years. I've never been to jail because I'm smart and I know how to go about it. I agree with Stan. You can't just confront them directly. That doesn't work. But you can indeed, as individuals, stand up and not support the government and not obey the laws and still protect yourself from their wrath. So it can be done. And I think in addition to your unified approach, individual resistance is very, very important.
All right, well, let me go back here to Michael. Michael, has the United States Justice Foundation ever considered the point that the sheriff, chief brought up, and that is, have they sued or joined with a group suing to reinstall, to reinstate, to refund, to re-empower a sheriff, as it's not legal and the government has no right to do the things that they have done, even though they do a lot of things they don't have a right to do?
Well, at this point, nobody has taken the steps to file a lawsuit. If they want to come to us in their county, for example, where the sheriff's office has been abolished, and they want us to take a suit like that, we will certainly do it. We will get involved and we will file suit on their behalf using local counsel and all our people in the office that we have. And we would go after something like this because I agree that this is a constitutional right, basically a constitutional authority established by state constitutions, and the federal government has no right, nor the state government has the right to abolish the office. So if anybody out there has filed such a suit, we don't know of any at this point, or if they're interested in doing it, they can contact me through the U.S. Justice Foundation at USJF.net, and believe me, we are perfectly willing to get involved in this fight.
Well, on that note, we will
in Delaware.
All right, hold on. We're out of time. Brent, stop. On that note, we're going to thank Michael for being here, and I'm going to encourage the chief to talk to some of his friends because Indianapolis would be a perfect place for such a lawsuit to be filed. Thank you, Michael. United States Justice, it's USJF.net, right?
Correct.
Well, thank you, sir, for your wonderful work, and we'll look forward to having you back. Stay tuned, folks. There's more coming. You have a computer, if you're alive today, which means you have a hard drive, which means it's going to break down. Mosey, the backup people, for thousands, for Stan, for thousands of people, for tens of thousands of people, is simply common sense. You go to cpnlive.com, click on the icon for Mosey, the backup people, and sign up. It's just a few dollars a month. Let me tell you something. We had a break-in. They stole our whole computer. You know what? When they take the computer, you can't recover anything, but we had Mosey. We had the backup. We were able to restore everything simply by buying another computer. cpnlive.com, click on the icon for Mosey, the backup people, and give yourself common sense, peace of mind, great value, the best thing you've ever done. Sooner or later, it's going to be Mosey, the backup people. I like to eat. You like to eat? We all do. And usually we run to the grocery store, we run to the convenience store, or we have something in the fridge. But power's been out in parts of this country in the last few weeks. We don't know what's going to come down the pike economically. Smart people are putting in food. Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves is a line of foods that you can put away that will last for a very long time. You know, they say eat what you store and store what you eat. This is great tasting stuff, healthy for you, a full line. You go to our website, cpnlive.com, and click on the button for Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves and see all the different things we have. This is good tasting food. It's reasonably priced. It will last. And it's worth its weight in gold if a problem arises. I know you don't think there's going to be anything that goes wrong. Actually, you do. This is smart. This is smart insurance. This is smart preparation. This is smart thinking. You have kids, you have a spouse, you have parents, you have dependents, you have an appetite. All those things can be addressed by a frugal but smart investment in Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves. Try them out. You will be tickled to death with the taste of them. You know what? In many cases, people start to eat this and they think, heck, this tastes better and costs less than what you're going to the grocery store to buy. cpnlive.com, check it out. Hey, my name is Stan Solomon, and you know if I have something to say, I'll say it. And I'll only tell you the truth because I'm a Republican, not a Democrat. Democrats always lie. Republicans only lie half the time. I don't lie at all. This is the Fuel Mule. It's an extraordinary product that was developed by a friend of mine, an engineer, and it increases the fuel mileage on your vehicle. If you have a combustion engine, this will increase your mileage by 10 to 20%. It bolts around your fuel line. You can install it yourself or have your mechanic do it. It is an extraordinary item and it flat works. I've been using it for more than 10 years. It's increased my mileage on every vehicle I put it on, and by the way, it will last forever. You can get rid of your vehicle, just take it off and put on the next one. Go to cpnlive.com. You'll have more information there. You can order it right there. We absolutely guarantee you'll be satisfied. The Fuel Mule. It's a way to kick down your cost of fuel and kick up your mileage. Don't you love the name? I thought of it. The Fuel Mule.